Why don't we call these meetings to order, the joint meetings? Can everybody hear me okay?
Yeah.
All right, so we'll call, I do want to make one comment after all the meetings are called to order. So I'd like to call the Board of Selectmen meeting to order. All members are present, and I'll turn it over to the Board of Finance.
I call this special meeting of the Board of Finance, the joint meeting, and it looks like all members but one are present.
He's on his way.
And he's on his way.
Yeah.
And I'd like to call the special meeting of the Police Commission to order. All members are present.
Okay.
At this point, we should collectively rise and pledge of allegiance.
Sure.
Pledge of allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'm gonna maybe not take the chair's prerogative because there's three of us, but maybe the first selectman's prerogative, and just call for a very brief moment of silence. Last night, I actually attended the inaugural ball. We left about probably 9:45, but as all of you know, I'm sure by now, there was a tragic accident on late last night. Quentin Williams, who had just been sworn in yesterday and for a third term state rep, was killed by a wrong way driver on Route 9 coming back from the ball. And young guy with a wife, and just a really, really horrible set of circumstances to begin the new year. So just very brief moment of silence, if you would. Thank you. All right, thank you, everybody. So why don't we, I'll turn over, since this is the police commission or Old Saybrook Police Department budget, why don't I turn it over to the chair of the police commission to move forward with this?
Thank you. Obviously, welcome to everybody here who isn't a police commissioner. We are conducting an experiment at the suggestion of Chief Sparrow. The experiment is to see if we can make his life, Larry Hayden's life, a lot of other people's lives easier if we just have one joint session for the initial budget presentation. You may have noticed that there is no action scheduled for tonight. That's going to follow with separate board levels. With that, I would turn things over to Chief Sparrow.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Welcome, everybody. Thank you. A little participation won't kill people tonight, so thank you very much. I'll echo the chairman's sentiments. We had done this maybe 4 or 5 years ago, and we found it to be very efficient by combining all three boards together in one room for the presentation, just specific to the presentation. And that way, when we meet individually, the police commission and then the board of selectmen and then the board of finance, our discussions are kind of about what you saw, but they're, it's much more fluid of a conversation because we're just not watching the presentation at that point for the third time. We're talking about the actual detail levels of the budget and having great conversation about that. So I do appreciate everyone being here tonight. I also recognize that the police budget normally involves some sort of a motion from the police commission, the board of selectmen, and the board of finance. And I would just ask everyone tonight, let's just take a deep breath. This is our annual budget presentation. This is the proposal from my office formally to the police commission. And we know that along the path, things are going to evolve, right? Things will change in the budget that I present tonight compared to the budget that will be presented to the town at some point. And so the first question that I want to answer for everyone is, why do we do this? Why, as the police chief, am I seeking this opportunity to talk to our three top boards in the town of Old Saybrook? And the main answer is respect. And so over the years, I clearly have a presentation style. I enjoy public speaking. I like talking about the police department. But tonight is not about me. This is not Flash. This is not Disney-esque, as it's been called in the past. This is all about respect. And first of all, it's a sign of respect to the human beings that put their lives on the line every day, for our dispatchers who pick up the phone and our clerical stuff that makes things happen behind the scenes. It's for them, the people who serve, and it's for the people who we serve that we have the privilege of doing that. Human beings helping out human beings. The second level is respect for all of you, elected officials in this room who all volunteer their time for the town of Old Saybrook to make sure that we're heading in the right direction. And then certainly for our taxpayers that fund over a $5 million budget for the Department of Police Services to be able to do their job. I feel this is a responsibility I have as your police chief to all those three groups and more. And I believe part of that responsibility is to be transparent with what we do with the funds that we so graciously receive to do our part to keep Old Saybrook safe. And I'd like you to kind of keep that in mind as we go through the night. I'm in my Class A dress uniform. Those of you former law enforcement, those of you currently in law enforcement, it's only worn at certain times, and it's worn to show and demonstrate respect. And I hope that you all feel that, if not now, certainly by the end of the evening. So the expectations of the presentation, obviously I want to be very respectful of your time. This is an extra night out for some folks. I'm going to go over some of the executive goals, last year's goals and my new goals for this coming year. We're certainly going to talk about the budget, do a little overview of the budget request and talk about our budgetary needs. I'm going to go over some enforcement statistics, some operational data that I'm excited to share with you, talk a little bit about our diversity and how that impacts policing in Old Saybrook, talk a little bit about staffing and structure. Some of the things I'm going to do, I'm going to move through pretty quickly, at least I hope and plan on moving through quickly. Keep in mind that this presentation is being videotaped. You can watch it again. All of the slides that you're going to see tonight will be a whole section in that eventual budget book that everybody in this room gets after the police commission adopts their budget. So you will have notes and you'll be able to go back and study some of the slides if you wish to. So I'm going to start by reviewing my executive goals from last year. Please report that all of my goals have been achieved. So we'll start with the first one. The first one was enhance and develop members of the first line leadership team through increased communication, mentoring, formal professional development, and augmented responsibilities through the delegation of authority. So I've gotten our leadership team much more involved with the operation of the police department. We've had a dramatic increase in staff meetings over the last year, and I've certainly delegated a lot of the work that I used to handle at my desk exclusively into now a mentoring role with some of our sergeants. The second goal was to complete the fleet enhancement program. As everyone in this room knows, there was a lot of trouble with that, right? Delays in getting the car, the microchip issue, shipping issues, getting the components in. Pleased to report we've auctioned off our two last cars. So they are sitting tucked into the corner of the St. John's lot. No, we're not hiding them. We just didn't bring them back yet. But we did receive the checks for that. As of right now, we're running a balance, a surplus in that project of $32,642. My expectation is as we pay down the remaining bills in that project, that we will still have a surplus and we'll be returning at least probably in excess of $10,000 back to the town to do whatever they wish to do with that project. The third goal that was accomplished, develop methods to increase the police commission's awareness and knowledge of the operations and personnel of the department through formal presentations and public venues. So those of you that have been watchful of the police commission meetings, you've noticed several operational workshops that have been put on, not by myself, but by members of the agency, the people boots on the ground doing the job. We still have some to do. We have patrol and criminal investigations, some scheduling presentations to do, but we certainly accomplished our mission in getting this new commission much more acclimated to the police operation. Our uniform enhancement project is complete, very happy with that, and on budget. Finalizing the executive reporting tool concept. The Board of Finance received a presentation in that. I know some members of the Police Commission were also present for that. And you'll see going forward how we're using that data to run the agency. And the final one was create a non-traditional outreach program that will engage youth, business, and town resident populations. I think a majority of the people in this room attended one of our 3 picnics over the summer. We had members from the business community, the community at large, and then we did a separate one over at Park and Recreation for all the kids involved in summer camp. It was a great time having all of our folks interact with the community, the business leaders, and our town's youth. So now we move on to my executive goals for this coming year. And just for those in the room who don't know this, the police commission obviously is aware of this. So the 21st century policing model came out of President Obama's reign. There's a blue ribbon commission that was put together. At the end of that study, the blue ribbon commission recommended, and it was adopted to law enforcement agencies nationwide, a concept called the 6 pillars of law enforcement. And so the 6 pillars of law enforcement are building trust and legitimacy, policy and oversight, technology and social media, community policing and crime reduction, officer training and education, and officer safety and wellness. And so when we do our internal operational strategic planning as a department every year, our strategic planning categories tie into the 6 pillars of law enforcement, and therefore my executive goals do the same thing. So my executive goal planning session process starts with our department strategic planning session, which is held every October. So the start of my goals are listening to what the goals are of my personnel. Then I get commissioner input if they choose to provide input. I also get a lot of external stakeholder input. So I'm in a lot of different places doing a lot of different things around town, both in my official capacity and not in my official capacity. But I always take the opportunity to say, hey, I'm here. What do you think? What's going on? What would you like to see? What do you hear? And that obviously helps me create my executive goals. That happens November, December-ish. And then my executive goals are announced at this formal meeting. All executive goals follow the SMART goal philosophy. So I'm sure everyone in the room is familiar with this, but each goal has to meet these 5 elements. They must be specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time bound. So I made the joke with my staff at my New Year's thing, a New Year's resolution of mine is certainly to exercise more and lose weight. That would be a SMART goal. But if I said I was going to lose weight, exercise more, compete in my 4th weightlifting competition in December and show off my 6-pack, well, that would not be a SMART goal because that's probably not achievable in a 12-month period. In addition to the SMART goal philosophy, I make sure that all of my personnel, when they make their annual SMART goals, also include these 6 elements. So any goal that's created must be good and successful and beneficial to the community. It must be fiscally sound. It's got to be beneficial to our employees, the operations, their supervisor, and obviously myself as the leader of the agency. So here are my goals for this year. First goal, create an annual report that highlights department personnel, traditional and non-traditional services provided, the number of and dispositions of internal investigations, a fiscal statement, interaction demographics, program highlights, fleet data, and facility information. A book that would come out in December of every year that is completely transparent. Anyone in the community can get a copy. It'll be online, it'll be in print format. It'll tell you everything you want to know about the Department of Police Services over the last year's period, the last calendar year. And that'll tie into all the information that we're releasing through our formal police commission meeting during the year and anything that we're producing online, and obviously have a correlation into the budget presentation the following January. We have never done something this detailed, and this is going to take, some work to do, but I know that my staff and I are up to the challenge, and I think it would be very beneficial to the community. The second goal is lead a team of professionals to prepare for an accreditation assessment and attain State of Connecticut Police Officer Standards and Training Council Tier 1 accreditation. So that'll be ginormous for our agency. It's never happened before. So we will get Tier 1 accredited is my goal by the end of this year. And we will also be pursuing the International Association of Emergency Dispatch accreditation. So while the law enforcement unit will seek accreditation, so will our emergency communications center. Third goal is refresh the department's website and renew the agency's presence on various social media platforms to foster increased communication, transparency, and engagement among those we serve. So we're going to get back online and we're going to do our best. Now, those of you that follow the police department Facebook page know that we have a few individuals that try and make it their life's mission to hijack the page and be very, very rude to anyone who wants to interact with us. That's sad, right? So if people don't like me, don't send me a Christmas card. More than likely, I won't be sending them one either. But hijacking a public safety Facebook page is absolutely ridiculous and childish. And it's preventing and hurting other members of the agency from doing their job. So I hope going forth, if those individuals still have that problem, perhaps maybe the police commission can get involved, or we can engage legal counsel, because it's important for us to be able to have that tool to communicate and engage with the public. The second one, the fourth one now, is revitalize and restart the Police Explorer program. We used to have a pretty robust program, and then COVID happened, and it just never got back to where it was. So our Police Explorer program used to be a feeder program to become per diem dispatchers during their entire college career. They would work the summers or work the holidays when the full-timers needed the time off, and they worked at a reduced rate, and it worked out as great for us and a great resume builder for them while they were in college. So we hope to team up with our high school resource officer and either create a criminal justice club where there could be different paths for different interests, and or just revitalize the Police Explorer program. The next goal I have for the next year is to develop the framework for a capital improvement plan focusing on long-term facility maintenance needs. We are so grateful for the facility we have, but after we cut the ribbon, we've really done nothing to plan for the next 10 years. And so a 24/7 facility is going to need some paint on the wall at some point. We're going to need another rooftop, right, HVAC unit at some point. We might have to replace a building system at some point. And so I think over the next year, I want to work with the police commission to develop that framework. And then maybe the following year, start budgeting long-term and make sure that we're going to the Board of Finance and making sure that we have a sound fiscal plan for the future, that we're actually saving for these large projects. Because the last thing we would want to do is spend multi-million dollars to build a new police facility and then not keep it up. That would be insulting, I think, to the taxpayers. So that is why we have that. We've spoken a lot about the gun safety program. So to make sure it happens, I've set it as one of my executive goals. So that goal is establishing a comprehensive gun safety program that focuses on safe gun storage and ownership, the collection of unwanted guns and ammunition all year round, and coordinate a gun turn event, however that looks, in June of next year, which is actually Gun Safety Month. Next one is create a professional development matrix for sworn employees that encompass agency needs and employee interests with retention hooks. So you'll see in a little bit, we have a young staff, and that young staff needs to develop over time. And so I want to create a professional development matrix that allows us to put the checks in the box. You need to go to this class. You need to go to that class. And there's an actual plan. I also want to take a police officer's interests. Hey, I have interest in photography or accident reconstruction or a drug recognition expert, and make sure that they get those professional development opportunities in addition to the basic professional development opportunities. And those turn into retention hooks. So later we're going to talk about the status of our personnel and how we as an agency have to find ways to hook people into the agency so that they want to stay longer. If we partner with them on what interests them, as long as it benefits the town, that's a win-win. But we have to be more hyper-focused on that. Next one is work with department personnel to create opportunities that promote emotional and physical wellness for individuals and for our entire team. This was a big focus from our department strategic planning session. A lot of folks want to get involved with this. There's some discussion with our police union, perhaps, about maybe requiring everyone to take the entrance physical agility exam every year. And if they pass and return, they would get an extra vacation day. Something that would have to be working. That's been an idea that's come to us from our personnel, which I think is extremely valuable. The next is establish a committee to review existing safety, non-lethal, and lethal equipment to ensure that we are providing the most superior and contemporary equipment for our police officers. The death of those two heroes in Bristol are still on all of our minds. And the after action review is telling the law enforcement community certain things. And it's certainly causing us to have some internal discussions. And so we need to take a look at what we're doing what we have and what we use. And if we think that we have an enhancement to offer, then we come to the police commission and report that. And it's up to the police commission to take action or not. Now, my final goal is probably a little bit bold because this one does not rest all on me. This rests on both me and the police commission. And that goal is as follows. Work together with the commission to reset our professional relationship. This can be accomplished through honest conversation and active listening. Then I hope to move forward together, working transparently, respectfully, and collaboratively as one team with different individual roles to achieve success on behalf of our employees and our citizens in areas related to matters of public interest and organizational vision. The bottom line, and no secret to anybody in this room, is what has happened in the last year is not working. It's not working for me, and my guess is it's not working for many of the people sitting around the room. But most importantly, it is not working for my staff, and it is not working for the public. And so I am asking the police commission to join with me on this venture to accomplish this goal. I think that if we fail to work together, we're failing all those people we just mentioned. And I think everybody here has their heart in the right place, and that's to serve and proudly serve the citizens of the town of Old Saybrook. So I look forward to partnering with the police commission to do this, and I'm very, very confident that we'll be able to do this together.
Wait, Chief, I really like all of your goals. I really feel like they speak to a lot of what the community has concerns over, as well as the commission, as well as the police officers in the department. So thank you. I really appreciate those.
Appreciate your comment. Okay, so we'll move on to the budget process. So obviously tonight is our presentation, the joint meeting. Then the police commission has to adopt the budget by January 15th. Then it's off to the Board of Finance and Board of Selectmen in that February area. The first selectman obviously presents his budget to the Board of Finance on March 1st. We're hoping to have the public hearing, I believe, on March 7th, and then our town meeting on May 1st. So that's 116 days from today. And so we started working on the budget at the beginning of December. So I don't know if it's ever happened to any of you, but does it ever seem like we just pass a budget? And then the next thing you know, I'm getting a memo from Leanne about how to start the next budget. So we spend more than 1/3 of a year planning for the next year in the town of Old Saybrook. So it is a streamlined process, but to some, it's a long process, a lot shorter than it used to be. But it is a process that takes some time. And look, we're dealing with people's money. So it should take time. We should take nights like tonight to investigate departments' budgets and their requests. So as I put in my email to you, there's our request this year. We're requesting to increase the operating budget by $164,489, or an increase of 3.14% over last year. I've included on this slide, and again, you'll get copies of all this, our request history. It seems like it was just yesterday we were doing UCOA, but apparently that was in fiscal year 18. So when you take a look at the history of our requests, this is our lowest request with the exception of, it looks like, 21 was a little bit lower percent-wise. So if you look at our request, we're doing pretty well, right? $164,489 compared to everything else except that UCOA year and the year after when we were crosswalking. Everything seems to be pretty much in line. There's not a huge budget spike from year to year, which I know has been an initiative of the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance not to have those budget spikes. So our budget this year is based on formulas using current data. It's the same formulas and assumptions that we've been using for years. They're the formulas that have been adopted in the past by the Police Commission through their budget approval, supported by the Board of Selectmen, 2 finance directors, and the Board of Finance. In this budget presented tonight, there are no new initiatives. There are no new requests for sworn personnel. We're maintaining existing efficiencies. We're maintaining services the way they are provided this very day. And these are the funds that we need to maintain a safe, efficient, and effective police operation. So why the increase? And so every year I like to point out, this is no surprise, right? Someone else other than me should be able to do this budget presentation because a large part of our budget is tied to personnel. And we negotiate personnel labor contracts. And personnel labor contracts, their salaries and their benefits, and then corresponding workers' compensation drive the budget increase year over year. So 89.5% of our budget is tied to personnel. We're human beings under one roof with badges and patches that provide services to other human beings. Other ways of providing services that we've achieved efficiencies in, we do more via email. But when someone has a complaint about something that's personal and private, we don't do that with a computer. We do that with another human being, and human beings cost money. These are the other budget drivers, so things that make us do the things that we do, from state and federal regulations and statutes to professional associations to make sure that we're staying contemporary, to making sure that we have risk management practices in place by consulting our risk management agency, our insurance agency, certainly all of our MOSHA mandates, things that are mandated by us by the Department of Transportation, the Department of Public Health. These are other budget drivers to make sure that we're doing what we're supposed to be doing. So when we build our request, there's always a question, do you use zero-based budget, right? So zero-based budgeting is you start with a blank spreadsheet. There ain't nothing on it. And then you look at all of your liabilities and build your budget. It's different than taking a budget and just adding a percent to it. And so I submit that's kind of what we do. We take our labor contracts, we find out what our fiscal liabilities are, we use existing data and formulas, we plug that information in, and we come out with a budget. We also take a look at what our needs are, right? So again, safe, efficient, effective operation. That is my job as the police chief, to deliver that every minute of every day. We're also very, very conscious of all of our fiscal liabilities. There were years, 8, 9, 10 years ago, where the police department was constantly in the red every June because we failed to budget our known liabilities. Luckily, through 2 very professional finance directors, that is not the case anymore, because there's not a finance director in the world who recommends not funding your known liabilities. It's a bad way of budgeting. And so through their tutelage, we've changed how we've done that. We also must budget for June of 2024 and not January of 2023. So if anyone in this room could have predicted the inflation that we're living through today a year ago, well, then help me with the mega millions numbers for tomorrow night. Or when the big thing, I'll cover the whole budget, by the way, if I'm the only. Things are formula based, and I like formula based because I like anybody in this room and beyond to say, I'm calling BS on your numbers, chief. Go ahead, do the calculation. If the calculation comes out different, I'll say I'm wrong and we'll change our request. So my goal over the years, and I've been presenting the budget to the Board of Finance since 2004. My goal over the years is to make the budget so transparent and so user-friendly that anyone can do it at home and justify what we're trying to justify to the public. And obviously, we provide, at the end of this, a detailed, written, and transparent product. And not to put down any of my fellow chiefs, nobody else does this in this area of the state. This is the most transparent and detailed budget for a police department that's provided to town leaders anywhere that I know of. So why do we need a budget? Well, calls for service, right? So calls for service are not just numbers to us. Calls for service are things that impact people's lives. They are very personal and private. They are not routine. They cannot be generalized. And they are always, always unique because every person is different and every circumstance is different. And we require, as I've mentioned before, humans to do the work. And I also introduced at this stage of the presentation, the concept of the service population. Old Saybrook is a busy place, right? It just is. We wouldn't have the bigger box stores wanting to come to town if we weren't a busy place. We wouldn't have the flagship box stores that we have in town if we were not a busy place. But all those places are not just for the residents of the town of Old Saybrook, right? We have more than 100 restaurants in town. Someone's got to have a kitchen somewhere. So people are coming in from out of town to either go to our restaurants, go to our stores, right? Do other things in town. That is our service population. So anyone that we provide service to through a car accident, a larceny, a fraud, a medical emergency, who does not have a residence in the town of Old Saybrook is part of our service population. And you will see later in the presentation that we actually provide more service to people that live outside of Old Saybrook than people who live in Old Saybrook. And I'm not talking about the summer population. I'm talking about all 12 months out of the year. And so here's some data. And again, you'll see this up close. These are more of the popular, if you will, call types and how many types of those calls we've had since 2015. We cut off 1 year every year and add another year. So, you know, as your police chief, when I look across this, some go up a little bit, some go down a little bit, but everything pretty much stays in the same range. You know, so our medical assist numbers were 1392 last year, 1784 this year. A little bit of a spike, but nothing that I would be alarmed about, right? So these things ebb and flow over the years, but there's nothing here that alarms me that would want me to cause anything to change in our fiscal request. Our dispatch center, remember, our dispatch center is the only point of contact for the town of Old Saybrook, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They're always there to answer the phone. There isn't one other municipal department that can do that. Last year, they answered and replaced 41,000 phone calls. So imagine your cell phone ringing 41,000 times. That's what our dispatchers are doing. Out of that 41,000, 4,555 of those were actually 911 calls. No real difference to us in a 911 call or a 7-digit line. Both are emergency lines. So every single burglar alarm, every single fire alarm, every medical alarm does not come in over the 911 line. It comes over on a 7-digit line. And so that's why it's important to understand how many calls are being processed by that very, very important component of the police department. There's our phone calls by hour and broken down by shift. So obviously the day shift has more phone calls than the midnight shift. But that's still a lot of calls, right? So between the hours of 11 p.m. and 7 a.m. in a year is 4,539 calls. And so a few years ago, the Police Commission, Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance, thank you, authorized the permanent placement of a second dispatcher on the midnight shift. And that has made a world of difference, not only to the employees, but to the services that we provide over the phone. There's our calls for service. So over the year, 7,445 calls for service on the day shift. Evening shift a little bit lighter, which no one would believe who works the evening shift, and the midnight shift with the most calls for service. The thing that I ask everyone to remember when we talk about our very dedicated public safety dispatchers is everything starts and ends with them. I call them the link. They're the only one that can link a citizen who needs help with people who can provide help. And then the only ones that can link a public safety professional, firefighter calling in a mayday, a police officer asking for backup, an EMT requesting a paramedic. They're the only ones that can take that request from our public safety professionals and have those other resources assigned and to respond.
Big Chief, can I ask you
Yes.
a quick question?
Sure.
So why, I mean, we don't have to get into detail, but why is the midnight shift? Why are there so many, like, is there a reason for that?
Yep, so on the midnight shift, and we'll get to this in the staffing
Okay.
formula, they'll do a lot more security checks
Okay.
of the buildings that we make sure that are logged in. Because if there's a burglary that happens or is reported on the day shift, we'll know when our last police officer, Ricky remembers this, so Sarge, when the last police officer drove around that building or tugged on a door.
Okay.
Here's our motor vehicle enforcement statistics for the year. So been using this chart for a while. So let's see, 2022, it looks like the worst drivers are men who live out of town, who are over the age of 35. So if you're a male who lives out of town and over the age of 35, please drive a little bit more carefully in Old Saybrook because our statistics show that you're a bad drivers. Take a look at our resident versus non-resident contact, right? So there we go back to that service population. 74% of the people that we're engaging with on motor vehicle stops live out of town, as opposed to 24% who live in town.
Why are this 1 to 17 mills, they're up so much? It's 4 to 69.
Different type of enforcement this year.
Okay.
So here is our other motor vehicle enforcement chart to find out what we're doing with folks. So our verbal warnings have gone down and our written warnings have gone up. We've introduced e-ticketing in all the police cars, which cuts down the time on task for a motor vehicle stop. And so I think that because it's easy to input a license, print something out and hand it out as opposed to handwrite it, we're seeing more written warnings than verbal warnings. The two are equal in weight, quite frankly, for enforcement. So you don't get in trouble for getting a verbal warning. You don't get in trouble for being issued a written warning. But that's really the only difference that you see. But again, if there's those rumors out there that all Saybrook cops do is give you tickets, well, we don't.
In the future, could you do that, both residents and?
Who's getting the enforcement? Residents? Yeah, I'm sure we can do that. Just a deeper dive of the data. I'm sure we can do that. Here's our NIBRS data. Now, the state of Connecticut, a little bit backlogged. They sent me a nice email this morning, and I appreciate their work in getting this data. They're not quite done with 2022 yet, so they don't want any of their data released. So they're a little bit behind in that. But interesting here, we've seen a little bit of a shift, a slight shift in our resident versus non-resident percentage when it comes to arrests. So if you take a look at the slide, only 70% of the people that we arrested this year are from out of town, as opposed to last year, 79%. So this year, 70% out of town, 29, 30%-ish of folks in town are taken into custody for a criminal charge. Here's some of our department statistics, how many citations we've issued over the year, criminal arrests, the arrest warrants that we've applied for, total number of incidents across the board. Interesting to note here, this year we did 88 search warrants as opposed to last year, 24. So that's a considerable increase in time from our detective unit. And that shows that we've put an emphasis on investigating crimes, right? So some crimes take a real long time to investigate. And that's why we have our dedicated detectives doing these search warrants. So a lot of things are cell phone search warrants. So as we make an initial arrest, we're seizing a cell phone, we're getting more data. That leads us to another search warrant for somebody else's information. So they're doing a really good job tracking people down who are responsible for criminal activity in Old Saybrook. It is not a fast-moving process. It is a very detailed process, but it's a process done by professionals. Now, this year we've done 5 risk protection orders. A new law went into effect in June that if someone wishes to do harm to themselves or others, police officers have to stay on shift, create a separate, it's pretty much a search warrant / arrest warrant almost, a risk protection order, and it's designed to prevent people from being able to go out and purchase a gun. So this is prepared, it's presented to a prosecutor, immediately to a judge. So in the last couple of days, we've had day shift folks or evening shift folks have to hang over to complete that process. We'll go to a judge's house on the weekend or in the middle of the night, sign this, then we have to serve it, whether they're still in the emergency department or transferred somewhere else or released from medical care. And then in 14 days, they have a hearing, which the police officer has to appear at. And so this new legislation, well, very well intended, has the law enforcement community kind of tied up. Like maybe perhaps all the details were not thought as well through. So this takes 2 police officers to go see and swear before a judge, just after anyone chooses to say, I wish to harm myself or I wish to harm others. So
You're forgetting the most important part, what they do with the search warrants. What do they take?
what's that? It's fine.
When they go to the house, they take the firearms out of the house.
Well, not in all cases,
I thought all domestics had to do that now.
in all domestics. So this is risk protection orders are for people who want to harm themselves or others. So no criminal activity involved in it whatsoever. And interestingly, in Old Saybrook, we'll be at more of those calls because we're the licensed first responders. So the intent of the law is to make sure that someone who wishes to do harm to themselves or others can't buy a gun, right? Good, check in the box. It's a very, very good thing. In communities that don't have their law enforcement responding to all those types of calls, this is missed. And so in Old Saybrook, it's not missed because we're the first ones in the door for a medical emergency. So if someone's wishing themselves harm, that's a behavioral emergency that we naturally respond to. We take care of the medical part, and after the medical part is done and that person is safe, we then put on our police hat and take care of the risk protection order. Here's just a couple, again, quick department statistics. This is all part of that new records management system that we're getting a lot of data from now that helps me run the agency. So this is off of our mandated racial profiling data. So when a police officer stops a car, they can't clear that car stop without entering racial profiling data into our system. So the police officer has to choose, they interacted with someone, are they male or female? And then we'll obviously see what the enforcement is that they provide. Then they have to choose whether they're white, Indian American, Black, or Asian. And then, of course, what they're issued, that's balanced between the two. And then they have to choose whether they're Hispanic, Middle Eastern, or they don't know. And so this is important data for me because it's just one way I can figure out if we are representative of the people that we're serving. So everybody in this room has listened to me over the last decade that one of my quests since 2009 was to take an all male white police department and diversify it, because I firmly believe that the police department should be representative of the people we serve. And so if I just take the percentage of the different folks that we are interacting with, whether it's male or female, their racial background, their ethnic background, and then take a look at our breakdowns and what our percentages are to see how close we are, how we're balancing out. So the top box there has to do with our sworn staff, just the police officers. The bottom box there is our breakdown of everyone that works in the agency. So you can see that, you know, we're become a little bit more diverse over the years, and that's really, really important. We've increased how many folks are Spanish speaking, and we need to do more of that. And we'll talk a little bit about that later in the presentation. But you can see the percentages all the way over to the right. They tie back to our percentages to see how close we are. So those are important numbers for me to be able to watch every day leading the agency. Here's our arrests by month, right? So if you ask the average Old Saybrook person, when's the busiest time for the Old Saybrook police? They say summer. They're wrong every year. Just like when you ask them how many cops there are and they say anything north of 25, or wrong again. So take a look this past year, busiest in May and December. Since becoming chief in 2009, I can tell you that we have more significant crime and we are busier after Labor Day every year. I cannot tell you why. It is bizarre. One year, this chart showed January and December as the highest months. Another year did February and April. I don't know. But this is what the stats tell us. And so as a law enforcement leader, we don't have a community that I need to ramp up policing in the summer. That's not what the data tells me. The data tells me is I need to maintain the same level of law enforcement professionals all year round. There's traffic count data. Now, normally we go over this. DOT is using a program that we're actually using called Power BI. You use that for like tooling stuff? Yeah. So Power BI. So you can go on the DOT website, click on the interactive map, and fly around Old Saybrook and see the different traffic counts. I put some in here because they've always been in our book. The last time the state DOT did this was in 2019. We have some other up-to-date ones for some of the larger developments that are going into town that we're requiring as part of a traffic study to do a traffic count. Those are not included in here because in theory they're proprietary until they file their application. But interesting enough, a lot of these say that there was less traffic in 2019 than there was in July 2016. All I know is I'm driving around at Old Saybrook in 2023, and there seems to be a lot of traffic everywhere. And so I'll be interested to see what these counts are for the larger developments coming in to see if they're north of the 2019 data. So again, just a couple of different screens for you to be able to look at when you're watching the presentation again at home for fun, or your budget book when you get them in a month or so. Here's our hotel motel data. We've always shown you total rooms, how many weekly rentals they claim. And this year we added how many calls for service we have at those hotels or motels. So there's a total of 393 rooms in Old Saybrook, and we had 262 calls for service at those hotels. Here's our retail calls for service. So here's some of our bigger box stores and how many times we go there for a call for service.
Wait, which one's Duncan West? Is that the one by Big Y?
Duncan West is the western one, yeah, by Big Y.
Okay.
Yep. Then we have our retail demographics. There are various banks and how many times we're called to them. Called to the health department today, says we have 100+ food establishments. Off of that, unless you're dining there, you take out Apple Rehab and Gladeview, they're licensed. The fire department kitchen is licensed, and all 4 of our schools in town have a license. Other than that, these are all places where you can go and eat in Old Saybrook. So again, people are coming here, which is great for our local economy. But just like the game of Sim City, as you build it, you need more infrastructure. Law enforcement is part of that infrastructure. Again, serving the service population more than our resident population. Here are our retail demographics. Stop and Shop was not willing to share the data with us in time for this presentation. They have for the past 13 years. A little change of heart there, not really sure why. But if you take a look at where their ranking is in their districts, their weekly customer count and their weekly gross, there is a lot of people coming to our shops. Again, fantastic, but these people need to be policed.
Quick question for you, Chief. The hotels, when you showed all those incidents at all our hotels. Whereas such as Pure Blue, Econo Lodge and so forth. Is there a way to keep track of which ones are using them as a permanent address and which ones are actually transient?
Well, they all claim that, first of all, good question. The hotels claim these are their numbers because that's what meets their zoning certificate.
That's kind of where I'm going.
Right, and so do we know anecdotally that people stay there longer? Yes, but the hotels are good about having them check out and then check into a different room, which keeps them in zoning compliance.
So people who live there have to move rooms every week.
Well, because they're not allowed to you're not allowed to rent a hotel room and make that your house permanently under zoning laws. So good question.
Most of them are year-round residents.
With kids too.
Yeah, full families,
That's why
absolutely.
I'm thinking you have to move rooms. Well, crazy.
Okay, so each year we do our staffing formula, right? So I'm gonna run through this pretty quickly because everyone has seen this before. Again, it will be in full detail for you. There are 5 accepted ways of figuring out the proper staffing level for police officers for patrol positions. They're the per capita approach, minimum staffing, authorized level, coverage based, and then the workload based. Per capita is you need X number of cops for X number of people. So if you go to the FBI website, that's how they do it. It's the most inefficient, ineffective way of figuring out how many cops you need, because in a community like ours, we're not policing just our resident population. So if we based our numbers on our 10,400 residents, we would be ill prepared to properly police the town of Old Saybrook with the amount of service population that runs through our town every single day. Minimum staffing is you must have X number of people on your shift every day. Now, we have that in our police officers collective bargaining agreement, but we don't, while that is a budget driver and a driver for scheduling, it is not how we figure out how many police officers we need. Authorized level, you're supposed to have 100 cops. So you get 100 cops, and it's a number just decided on by a group of elected officials that really has no meat to it, other than the votes that they took to approve that staffing level. So I believe that's ineffective. The coverage-based approach is saying, okay, every square mile, there shall be X number of police officers. Doesn't work for a community our size. So we go by the workload-based approach. And the workload-based approach is something that was taught to me at a very young stage in my career, certainly reiterated when I attended the FBI National Academy and other executive law enforcement professional development opportunities. It is the most honest and transparent because it takes what you do and applies it to what you need. And so when we talk about the minimum adequate patrol personnel for public and officer safety, we're talking about the people who actually deliver the service, the patrolmen. So this doesn't have to do with the chief or the captain or how many dispatchers. That is not part of this. This is about people who deliver service based on that workload approach. And so there's a bunch of steps, right? So the first one is you have to determine how many incidents, right? An incident is every little thing that happens. An incident is a cop directing traffic, unlocking your car, a burglary investigation. Traffic takes 20 minutes, unlocking your car takes 15, the burglary takes 60 hours. All are one in this calculation. So there's no wait for time. Then we look at all the different things we do that are a thing, and we say, no, that can't count towards figuring out how many cops you need. So we take out all of those security and patrol checks. We take out prisoner checks. We take out things that we do to test our radios and have to document. So we take off all that, we minus all that, and we found 12,962 incidents that did not meet the definition of this staffing formula. Okay, so transparency right up front, we cut our own numbers. So the number that we're using in our calculation is 9,067 calls for service or incidents. Then we multiply the incidents by 0.75. And so this is based on the accepted fact that it takes about 45 minutes to handle a complaint. Now, the Board of Finance and some members of the Police Commission know that I have drilled down exactly how long we're taking on calls. So I'm hoping that if not next year, the year after, our data will be so clean that I'll be able to start replacing elements of this formula with taking out the accepted use and giving you the real number, the real average number that it's taking us. And you'll see a little bit of that later too. Then we multiply by 3, that makes up the unknown. So this takes care of all the time a police officer's on a traffic stop or doing something community policing related. But going forward, I'll have that actual time. I'll know how long police officers in Old Saybrook spent on traffic stops for the year 2023 or the year 2022. Okay, so then we divide the product by 2,920. That's the number of hours a normal full-time employee working 5 days on, 2 days off works in an entire year. It's the number that's necessary to staff one patrol unit for 1 year. Okay, so 8 hours for every day is 2,920. That's just one person, one shift, 365. Then we talk about availability because we give people sick time and vacation time, and they take family medical leave, and all sorts of things happen in an employee's life. So even though they're scheduled for a certain amount of days, they don't actually work all those days because their collective bargaining agreement allows them personal leave time. And so here's our non-available patrol time for someone working a 4-day on, 2-day off schedule. What's interesting about this is as we have a less tenured staff, there's more availability. Why? People with less time on have less vacation time. The more tenure you receive, the more benefits you get out of the collective bargaining agreement, right? The longer you work, you get more vacation time. You might get more sick time. And so as you have a more senior staff, your availability goes down. And so some of the things we take into consideration, their regular days off, because remember, they don't work 365 days a year. Their meal breaks, which we'll talk about a little bit later, personal leave time for vacation and holiday, personal leave time for sick and family sick time, bereavement leave, FMLA leave, which is becoming much more popular amongst all employees, I think, municipality-wide, professional development time, and their EMT recertification time. And so we plug that into a factor and we come out that we need 14.95 patrol officers. So there's the formula and the results and what we need. Remember, this does not include administrative supervisors or specialists. So here's what's interesting. The need for our police officers has gone down. And it's gone down because our unavailability time has also decreased. So the less tenure staff, the more available you are, the reduced need for full-time personnel. So here's what we've needed across the board. And here's where we are. Okay, so we're right on par. The formula says we need 14.95 patrolmen, and if all goes well, we'll have 14 patrolmen. So I'm happy. Here's what's interesting. So we survey municipal police departments that have populations of 12,000 or less. Here's where Old Saybrook is. Clinton has 27, we have 25 full-time officers. Madison, nice little shops, but certainly not the service population that we have here in Old Saybrook. 30 police officers, we have 25. So we've maintained this level for a really long time. I think we've probably only grown since the mid 80s, early 90s, probably 2 or 3 patrolmen. Here's our supervisory structure compared to those same towns. So who has a deputy chief versus a captain versus a lieutenant? If you take a look at Old Saybrook, you'll notice that we have a very lean top supervisory structure. So you can go to some departments and there's rank everywhere. You go to Old Saybrook and that is not the case. So we're investing our money into direct service providers as opposed to investing money into supervisors that sit in an office. So I believe we're putting our money in the right place. Here is the proposed salary schedule for the fiscal year 2024. And then here is where we compare. So Old Saybrook has 4 steps now to their police officer wage scale on their contract. The towns with the asterisks are currently in contract negotiations, so inevitably they will go up. Clearly, if you want to enter law enforcement, Weston is the town to do that in. After 3 years, you're making $100,000 base salary. Here is where our sergeants compare amongst those same towns. So again, Weston, 2 years on as a sergeant, $120,000.
Chief, you said 2 years in the department?
2 years as a sergeant. So Weston has 2 steps. You get promoted to sergeant. In 2 years, you're making $120,000. And Old Saybrook, after your 4th year, that's what our step 3 is. After your 4th year, you're making $99,369. So here's the current status of our staff. We employ 53 people. Out of those 53 people, 35 folks are full-time employees with full-time liabilities attached to them. 18 of them are per diem. So 34% of our staff are per diem employees. That's a built-in natural efficiency, right? Because these per diem employees have no long-term liabilities associated with them. They don't have pension, they don't have healthcare on the retirement, nothing. They work and get paid when we need them to work, and when they work, we pay them. Out of the 25 full-time law enforcement officer positions, and again, that 25 includes myself and the captain. Out of the 25, we have 19 that are active. 1 is on paid administrative leave currently. 3 are in the police academy. 1 will be graduating in March, 2 in August of 2023. 1 is in field training, doing his comparative certification. He's a certified officer hired from a different state, so he's going through his Connecticut certification now. And we currently have 1 open position. For our dispatchers, we have 9 full-time positions. 8 are in active status. 1 is on an unpaid leave, scheduled to return the very beginning of February. We have 1 active and very active clerical position. And for our custodial folks, we have 1 person who works 10 hours on the weekend, and our full-time 30-hour custodian is currently on an unpaid leave in accordance with his contract. And so that's the overview of what's going on. So we're doing a lot without all of our resources. So when we just hired those folks that are graduating in August, they started the academy last week. They don't graduate till the middle of August, and then they do 10 weeks of field training on the road before they're actually a police officer. So we've done our best to find lateral hires that shorten that time, but not every lateral hire has worked out to be a star for us. Time on task. So I just took what I got at 7 o'clock this morning. Every morning at 7 o'clock, the CBS trumpet sounds in the morning show, and my email goes off 4 times. And it's with all the different reports that I and the captain and the master sergeant receive every single morning at 7 o'clock. And so here is Patrolman Simpson's work. He worked the evening shift. He actually worked the road job during the day, then the evening shift at night. And I look and see what they're doing. Remember, we're keeping time on task for everything. And one of the things I noticed is he was only on proactive patrol for 1 hour, 16 minutes and 58 seconds. So for less than 2 hours, that police officer, one of two working, was driving around town in a proactive crime prevention mode. So that's something that concerns me a little bit, right? Because, well, bad people don't call up and go, whoa, was gonna do a robbery, saw the cops, didn't, good job. I don't get that feedback. I know from being a law enforcement professional that if I don't have a lot of proactive patrol going on, I'm not deterring crime. I'm solely reacting to it. Here is Sergeant Ciccone. He worked a day shift. And again, I take a look at his proactive patrol time. He's 1 hour, 20 minutes and 29 seconds. I just pulled data from yesterday. I had no idea what it would be. But again, this shows you how they're doing other things. And if you want to know what they're doing, well, it's all right here. Right? So it's not that they're not jotting down their time rate. For yesterday, his 8 hour shift, I tracked him 7 hours, 51 minutes and 55 seconds. Well, this last guy, he worked a little bit over his double shift. I tracked him for 16 hours, 14 minutes and 57 seconds. So when I tell you we're pretty spot on with this data, we're really spot on with this data. Here's Sergeant Mikowski. He worked the evening shift last night. And again, his proactive patrol time, 1 hour, 34 minutes and 41 seconds. Just something I have to keep my eye on, right? This happens every once in a while, no big deal. If this is the trend, I have to start figuring out what should we be doing to police the town of Old Saybrook in a proactive manner a little bit better. Time on task, everyone remembers the ATM theft, right? Everyone remembers seeing the video there. And so we have a lot of time into this right now. Detective First Class Williams has spent 150 hours and 26 minutes on this case. We are solving ATM thefts all over the place, just from the information that we've gathered through a lot of those search warrants we talked about before. He's doing a fantastic job, but this isn't his only thing. So when you look at 150 hours, that's in addition to everything else that he's doing. And so I know on that one case, everyone who worked on it and what they did, right? So while Detective First Class Williams spent 26 hours and 26 minutes doing a lot of different arrest warrant application preparation, I can see that Detective Tabor spent 25 minutes on a phone call supporting what Detective First Class was doing, investigating his case. So we know what they're doing, how they're doing it, and this will allow me to start extrapolating this data and putting it into that staffing module at some point. This is something that I also want. This is called zero status. So I have our system keeping track of whenever there is absolutely no Old Saybrook police officers available to respond to calls, starting at the 2-minute mark. If no one's available for a minute, no one's available for a minute 59. Okay, the 2-minute mark when we have no one to go anywhere, that's what I want to know about. So since July, there's been one time where we had 4 calls waiting. There's been 29 times where 2 calls were waiting with no one to respond. And there's been 197 times where there's been 1 call waiting with no one to respond. What are those calls? I don't know. I can drive it down. But no one can put the importance on someone's need, right? So I can tell you, these 4 calls were burglar alarms. And some people in the room will be like, it's burglar alarm. Unless it's your house. And then you don't want to be the 4th call waiting, right? If you're standing in a lobby to report a sexual assault that happened, you don't want to be one of the 2. And so this is why I watch this. I am not overly concerned, but zero status reporting, along with how little we're doing proactive patrol each day and evening, is a little bit of a concern for me. A trend I have to watch. Nothing that I'm asking for more resources for, but I'm watching the trend, and that's part of my responsibility.
So Chief, so that's 1 to 4 calls waiting within 2 minutes.
So we hit zero status,
Right, sorry.
right?
Yep.
227 times between July and December.
Okay.
That meant at a 2-minute mark, we started logging time. We started saying, oh, no one's available, no one's available, no one's available. We're keeping track of that. And so these are 227 individual distinct times when we're not available for calls. And this is how that unavailability broke down.
What is like, if you have this information, what's like the longest time somebody's had to wait?
I didn't extrapolate that. But my staff will tell you, there's often times where someone will come in off duty to start taking some of these calls, right, to make sure that we're staying efficient.
Okay.
Here's an interesting one, meal break. So our police officers, by contract, get a 45-minute meal break every 8-hour period. Since July, 50%, 58% of all shifts, no one took their meal break because they were so busy. And so that's something that does concern me, right? So when we talk about officer safety and we talk about officer wellness, you miss your lunch or your dinner or your break once a week, it happens. If you're consistently not being allowed on your shift because of how busy it is, time to relax, to take a breath, I'm concerned about a lack of emotional wellness of our police officers. And so this is a trend that I really need to change. I need it to be the exception that a police officer does not get the opportunity to eat on their shift, to take a break, as opposed to what's becoming the norm. So this I find concerning, but the solution is not throwing more people at it. Because every time you add a cop, you increase all sorts of liabilities, more vacation time, more sick time, more healthcare. So to solve these problems is not to throw personnel or money at it, it's to see how we're dividing up our research on our shifts. And that's what we'll be looking at. Speaking of our staff, take a look at this. These top four, I like the guy on top right there. He can leave at any second. Then the master sergeant, the captain, and our fourth in command, Sergeant Ryan Walsh. Those four folks can either leave now or certainly within the next 5 years. So Ryan can leave 2027, the captain 2023. Well, that's next year, captain 2023. Master Sergeant DeMarco, he could be riding off in the sunset in his Mustang as well, and so can I. And I show you this because when you take a look at the years of service and the years of knowledge in our department, it is not well balanced, right? So we have 11 people. Hey, John. We have, if your candy's missing, Brad took it. No, we have 11 people that have less than 4 years on. So these folks here need a lot of mentoring, a lot of supervision to make sure that they're doing the job the way we want it done in Old Saybrook. So here are some of my concerns, right? We talk a lot about retention and recruitment. I like to say we thought of it first in Old Saybrook. Remember that a couple of years ago, big turnover report. I was told I was nuts because I said it's a nationwide problem. And guess what, boys and girls? The recruitment and retention of law enforcement officers is a nationwide problem. But I have additional concerns with recruitment. So right now we have a sergeant vacancy. No one wants it. Plenty of people eligible. No one wants it. Because if they go from top step patrolman to patrol sergeant, their quality of life changes. They go from working a day shift, right, by bidding their shift preference in accordance to their seniority, to being the less senior person in a rank, and they don't want to work midnights. And so back in my day, you didn't care because your goal was career advancement. That is not what motivates today's employee at all. So we have a void right now, and I'm not really sure what we're going to do with it. I don't know if we're going to try to hire a lateral patrol sergeant. I'm not sure yet. So quality of life versus career advancement is very, very important. There are some things that I can't compete with, right? So Bristol is hiring 10 officers. They're offering a $10,000 signing bonus that they give to you after your 12th month of employment. Can you imagine me going before the Board of Finance saying, John, I need $100,000, right? All set. Excellent. You're on tape now, John. But think about that, a $10,000 signing bonus. They're also saying, hey, no matter where you come from, we'll match your salary or we'll advance you to our next step. Oh, and all those vacation days you have, no problem. We'll match it or exceed it. I don't have that ability in Old Saybrook. We don't have that ability in Old Saybrook. We've never talked about it. We tried to bargain it once with the police union, and that turned out to be disastrous. This is going to hurt every municipal police department. in arbitration over salaries for police officers. The state police contract, once it's ratified and put into place, will make them the highest paid police officers in the state of Connecticut. So whose contract do you think every municipal police department is going to bring with them to arbitration over salary? The state police. There are other communities like Middletown that we've lost police officers to. I can't compete with. We're 25 and out, 50% of base pay. They're 20 and out, base pay plus overtime. I could work 4 years in Old Saybrook, go to Middletown, they're counting my time. I got 16 more years to work with a better pension. Middletown offers health care upon retirement. State police, health care upon retirement. Bristol, health care upon retirement. Old Saybrook, nothing. And so what's happened is over the years, Old Saybrook has done a phenomenal job bargaining our contracts. We have reduced dramatically the town's long-term liabilities. But in this climate, we've done it to a fault. So we used to have clauses of our contract where you didn't earn overtime until your 43rd hour. We got rid of that. We used to dock people pay the inability to earn overtime if you called in sick. Well, we were telling the rest of the world the last 2 years to do what if you were sick? Stay home. Stay home so we can dock your pay. It was a mixed message. We got rid of that. And so it's time for the police commission and the board of selectmen and the board of finance to have a non-budget error conversation about this. Because this is not going to get any better. Whether I'm here or not, this is going to be a problem for you. And so you need to start planning for it. What are you going to do to recruit, to become competitive in this market? What are you going to do to stay competitive, to keep people? This is not about me. This is everything about the town of Old Saybrook.
Didn't we have health insurance upon retirement?
Long time ago. So there's only, what would you say, Chris? Probably 5 of us left that get it?
I would say,
If that,
So that was obviously an exchange, the union wanted something else.
100%.
So it's the union that is not providing it, then they should advise people to not.
The town went to the union, I mean, I remember this clearly, and said, we want to reduce your long-term liabilities. We want to get rid of health insurance. And so the union accepted something in exchange for that. Most likely very short-sighted. But this is no time for a blame game, right? This
No, but I'm
isn't,
just saying though, that's, people, nobody thinks of that when you're 25 years old. Nobody thinks that when I'm
Absolutely.
60 and I have to pay, or not even 60, 25 years, so you start here at 21, you're 46 years old. No one says, wow, if I have to get a plan for me and my wife, it's gonna be $2,500 a month. And that is what insurance is.
same thing with shift bidding,
Yeah.
right? So greatest thing everyone wanted, I was always worried about it, and it's put us in a spot that now no sergeant, no new person wants to become a sergeant because they don't want to go to a shift they don't like. And so whatever's happened in the past has happened. I am concerned about the future. So Old Saybrook has chosen to have a police department, which means we have to field the team. It's obvious the number of teammates we need. So in order to have the best team, we have to stay competitive in this market. We are not alone in this, guys. This is not an Old Saybrook specific thing. But we should be one of the leaders in doing what some other people are doing to make it attractive to come here and attractive to stay. Okay, 3 parts to our budget, then a bonus to Marine Patrol, general expenditures, field services, and support services. General expenditures, we have stayed flat with general expenditures for a very long time. How will we done that? Well, we freeze the budget every July 1st. So I had an email conversation with some of the commissioners last night. They wanted to see our actuals for the year. And I said, here you go. But actuals are not a good way to forecast the budget because we freeze on July 1. Or if we're under contract with fuel, we're writing a big check in the beginning of July. So actuals really don't balance out to future needs when we're budgeting or presenting a budget in January. The only line item that's going up is workers' compensation, and it's going up $20,040. It's not an email I enjoyed getting from Leanne yet, you know, it is what it is. And so how do we manage no increase? Freezing the budget, being very, very efficient, and balancing our needs during the year. right? And so if you look at our end of the year budget and compare it to this, we go over in some of these line items to make sure that we're doing and getting what we need to operate in a safe manner. But for the majority of the last couple of years, we have not been in the red. We have always come in the black. So what we're doing is working. If you take $100 from OSHA and add it to prisoner care or vice versa, it's not going to do anything. It doesn't change the world. Here's our gas usage for the last couple of years. You can see we stay pretty well in the same area, right? Between 25 and 27,000 gallons of gas. We're requesting the 40,000 again. We know the Board of Finance policy, taking some of that outside job money that we get that we charge for vehicles and infusing that to pay for gasoline, which is why this number has worked for us. We're obviously not contracted for gas. Our first selectman is phenomenal at watching the market and deciding when to buy. We didn't pre-buy this past year. Obviously, it was very volatile. And who knows where we'll be in a couple of months. You know, he may call me and say, I just locked in for gas. I'll say, okay, let us know how much we owe you. In our operating budget for field services, a majority of the categories go up, and they go up because they're personnel related. Costs have gone up. The cost of benefits go up. Salaries go up, and that causes all the various line items to go up. I want to draw your attention to one thing. You see police holiday replacement went up $33,000, and you're thinking, what is going on there? I then want to show you the holiday payout that went down $21,740. So the balance is really $11,000. And that's because of a change in the way people were getting their personal leave time. Remember in an earlier slide, I spoke to you about people were valuing time off more than they're valuing money. So we adjusted that. So now they get more time off and we pay them less for their days. And the delta there was $11,892. This is just a little thing on step raises. So here's our contract, our collective bargaining unit agreement again. And so people from year to year jump a step. So they get a step increase along with that general wage increase for that year. If you're at top step, all you do is get your general wage increase. For all non-union members in the entire department, they received a 2.5% raise this year. Our police union received a 2.25% raise, plus some extras and an MOU that if they work a certain number of years, they get a little bit of an increase, couple $1,000 increase. And our dispatchers receive a 2% general wage increase. So just for the police officers, just for the folks in the union, just step raises alone, $72,000. So when I tell you that that's the most significant part of our budget, here's one of the budget drivers. Everyone in this room could stamp their feet, hit their head, and run out. This doesn't change unless we want to violate their contract, get sued, and pay legal bills, and then pay them this money. Okay, so this is a non-negotiable number. This becomes negotiable every time we go into negotiations. So the police officer contract ends in June 30th, 2024. The dispatcher contract, I think, goes to June of 2025. And that's when we negotiate this and all the benefits along with it. Here's our support services, so dispatchers and clerical personnel. So up in every category because salaries go up. But when I talk about going up, $1,400, $85, $65. And you might say, well, why do you need it? Can't you do without the $65 increase? Probably could. But then I'm not following the path that I followed for the last 6 years, which has yielded success for this department and this community. So once we say, get rid of 85 and 65, and we stop following the plan, that will have a domino effect for future budgeting. And so we've done a great job following the plan, reducing budgetary spikes and staying on the path. So everything goes up. Our dispatch, vacation, and personal day coverage goes down a little bit due to personnel transition. The educational degree stipend goes down a little bit. Uniforms and cleaning stays flat for everyone in the agency. And again, you know, like the DC contributions went up $9. But if I don't properly fund that, someone's going to be angry with me. So whether that's $9 or $900, that's our known fiscal liability, and it has to be budgeted. Not really capital budget anymore, but I still call it that. We get $10,000 in a line item to support information technology each year. I can tell you that's a joke, right? So everything we do touches a piece of information technology. If I call someone on my radio, it's going to a tower, it's getting scrambled in a computer and rebroadcasted out, all on computers. So every single thing we do, from our phone system to our radio system, things we do in the cars, all information technology related. We have our $89,804 payment for our vehicle finance purchase. Thank you again. Talk about that in a moment. And not in the budget. We think it's going to be a little bit less than $70,000, but at some point, we're going to need to get engines for the boat. It's, bless you, it's always been discussed that that would be a capital non-recurring type of thing. We're being told, and I'm hoping that this changes, that ordering engines is about a year out due to the backlog and everything. So I will certainly be tasking the folks that run our Marine Patrol, Captain DePerry and Sergeant Ryan Walsh, to start looking into that and start getting estimates for the repowering our vessel and getting that time lag, not to be incorporated in our budget, but maybe post-budget season to be able to sit down, have that discussion, and maybe eventually bring that to town meeting in a capital non-recurring type request. Here is our fleet. Thank you, thank you, thank you. This is probably, in my entire tenure, the best we've ever been with the department fleet. So we have our primary patrol vehicles, 10 of them, that we're lease purchasing. We have our criminal investigations fleet, nothing new there, same stuff. We have 5 vehicles that we owned already, that we bought and paid for, that are literally making us money every day, and they're just assigned to private duty work. So we're no longer using a primary patrol car and adding wear and tear for it to sit on the side of the road with its lights on for 8 hours. Then we have 3 vehicles that the police commission just authorized. Instead of decommissioning them and sending them away, half decommission them, but we brought them back. Those will be assigned to the school resource officers. So never will be a time that there's an SRO at the building at 7 a.m. and a sergeant is scrambling, what car are we sending to the school? So we took those 3 cars, we sent them, we fixed them, did whatever we had to do to them. They're getting lettered now, and they should be on the road hopefully in a week or so. So we'll have 3 dedicated cars to the SROs. This frees up crisis with our fleet. So thank you to everyone in the room. As I mentioned before, we're gonna have a $32,642 balance as soon as those 2 checks get deposited this week from the last 2 cars we sold, and I'm anticipating a little bit in excess of $10,000 being returned to the town, making that project ending in the black, which we're really proud of after a very tumultuous 2 years of getting it done. You like surpluses and projects, John. There you go.
What is that I can't read it, I see the van, and what's right above the van?
That's our antique car.
Yeah,
That's the
that's what I'm saying.
1964 Ford Galaxy. When I became chief, they tried to write it in my contract, but that was my take-home car. But I can't do the shift on the stick, so it didn't work out. Here's Marine Patrol. Marine Patrol, not a lot of substance here. We know we need the boat. We've been through that. Like not to rehash that. The increase is $1,716, or a 3.14% increase. A majority of that obviously is our personnel that receives that 2.5% general wage increase like every other municipal employee that's not under a collective bargaining agreement. And then that's the total budget, $63,991.
Chief,
Yes,
you track the in-town, out-of-town, the same as you do for your regular routine activities in town?
yeah, very easy to do with our new system. So I can really data dive a lot. And so what I have to do sometimes, Sergeant, is I catch myself not to data dive too much. So I don't go from a 50,000 foot level to a 1,000 foot level of managing the agency. That's not healthy. It's not healthy for personnel either. So I'm restrictive on how I'm using the tools now. I mean, think about when you're on patrol. If the chief every morning at 7 a.m. got a detailed breakdown of what Sergeant Tom Stevenson did for the last 8 hours.
100 miles.
100 miles, right?
100 miles. Often.
So, there's a microscope attached to working for us, but I think it's accountability. And I think this day and age, law enforcement officers that work in the public domain need to be accountable to the citizens who pay them. So there's our Marine Patrol. Just a couple of short things that I do want to show you. We're very, very near the end of the presentation, and I appreciate your attention. So we've done this the past couple of years called Bring the Budget Alive, and we take a look at all the different line items that comprise the Department of Police Services operating budget. And we find that on a majority of all of our calls, what we're doing is pretty much touching almost every single line item that is funded. And so the message to folks in this room is, if we don't properly fund one of these line items, we're potentially creating a scenario where our dedicated police officers cannot achieve professional success. And so it's important to follow the path. So let me just share a couple quick things with you.
Old Saybrook 911, can you tell me exactly what happened?
I'm at a high school and everyone's fighting, and there's a lot of people fighting here right now. I need someone to come here. They won't stop.
How many people are fighting?
There's about like 20 people there, and they're all fighting.
20 people fighting?
Yes, and they're breaking glass.
Okay. All right. Are there any weapons involved?
No, it's just glass. They're fighting each other with beer bottles.
With beer bottles? Okay. Headquarters to 14. Should be advised we're taking the 20-person involved physical altercation, Boston Post Road. They're residents. We do the residents.
Roger, 30 and I, 39 and I will be responding there. If you can call the troop, we're going to need backup.
Midnight shift, 3 people working by contract, sergeant, 2 patrolmen. 1 patrolman has just arrested someone for DUI. That suspect now is vomiting in the back of that police officer's car, claiming that they're having chest pain. So remember, body camera, camera in the car, camera in the back seat. Everything we do is recorded. And so we have an obligation now to provide medical care to this prisoner that we have taken into our custody. A dispatch goes out for another location in the town of Old Saybrook where there's 20 people involved in a fight, that they've smashed beer bottles and they're fighting each other with beer bottles. That is not a safe situation. Keep in mind that every single police officer, and rightfully so in the state of Connecticut, has Bristol on their mind. I want them to have Bristol on their mind, because those 2 did not sacrifice their lives for no reason. And so if every single police officer in the state of Connecticut and across the country goes to a call safer because of their heroics, then good. And so my sergeant has just said, whoa, 20 people, 2. It's not good. So he's asked for backup. So he simply said, call the state police. And in my presentations of the budget since 2004, there has always been someone in the audience that says, just call the neighboring police department. Plenty of help. Well, let's listen.
Roger.
Trooper Thomas Hall speaking.
Hey, it's Old Saybrook Police. We got a report of a 20-person fight. You could get us some backup. We only have 2 cops available to head.
All right, we're tied up a little bit down on 95 right now. We got 2 guys on our Radicop that evaded us, and we got 1 guy over at Clinton. We'll try to get guys over immediately, but 20-person fight.
I guess they're smashing glass bottles and everything. And
all right, I got you. We'll try to get somebody over as soon as we can. All right.
All right, thank you.
HQ, any weapons?
Only weapons involved included beer bottles, smashed beer bottles. Unknown injuries for any parties involved.
Roger.
14 troops been notified, stated they're tied up. They're going to send a trooper over as soon as possible.
Roger, you can call Old Lime in Clinton as well.
Roger.
Clinton.
Hey, how are you? Dispatcher Fox, Old Saybrook.
Hi.
Do you have any police officers available to assist us with a 20-person fight?
Is that a residence or a business?
It's a residence.
Okay. At the moment, we don't. The troop just brought us in file 5.
Okay.
And they also I'll let the supervisor know as soon as we have someone available.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Madison Police, how can I help you?
I was just wondering if you have any units available. We have a 20-person altercation, physical altercation in our jurisdiction, and we've been calling around. There's no one really that has units.
Yeah, let me see what my sergeant can say. I'll get back to you.
Thank you.
All right, bye.
30, we're going to need you over here. Roger. 30, you can secure the vehicle. And the tow truck company will just have to give us 16 when they arrive.
So just a little example of what's going on in the mind of our patrol officer and the other patrol officer, our patrol supervisor and our patrol officer, going to this fight, arriving at the fight, cars are taking off, people are running away, and it's just the two of them. And they don't even know if anyone's coming. In fact, the only thing that they've heard from their dispatcher, the link, is I can't find anyone. That's tough. Let's see here. All right, I don't know if this is gonna come up or not. I'm a little concerned if we're not showing.
What's location of the emergency? I don't want to carry out. What's happening?
Hold on 1 second, everyone.
Does anyone need more candy? No. Okay.
Old Saybrook 911, what's the location of the emergency? At a One Hood Trail. Okay, tell me exactly what's happening. My boyfriend just caught a couple of people just breaking into my Mercedes and his truck. He went outside to chase them, and they took off in a white Toyota car. A white Toyota car, and do you know which way they went? They went down to the stop sign out towards old Boston Post Road. Headquarters at 25 and 30.
25. 30.
Taking a report of an attempted stolen vehicle. Caller is on Adawan Hood Trail, stated that a white Toyota vehicle attempted to steal their vehicle, stated that they took off at a high rate of speed, making their way towards Old Boston Post Road. Getting more info now. Caller reporting there's also a black BMW X7 just racing off the house.
Redbird Trail behind those vehicles. You can pick up floors.
We're on Shetucket. They're gonna be pinned in.
They're on Shetucket Trail. They're going to be pinned in. They're going to have to take off.
So what's interesting is, for those of you that came for our holiday open house, our dispatchers are watching this same view. So the dispatcher, I don't know if you heard it, obviously I have a trained ear, he just announced to everyone, he just parked and he's gonna be taken off. The cop arriving didn't have to take the time to do that, because the dispatcher, serving as a virtual backup officer through free technology, is watching out the windshield.
Show me your hands! Show me your hands!
They better now put the suck in the swat.
Show me your hands!
25 in foot pursuit, 4 males.
Show me your hands! Show me your hands!
I got 4 males in the swamp. I got 1 in a white shirt. They all got ski masks on.
This is serious stuff. Right, so the other day I'm hanging out in Jeep as the undercover guy, because we don't have a lot of staff, right? We don't have tons of people. And we have folks, you know, scattered around the auto mall waiting to converge on these people who were gonna commit a fraud. Buy a car, right? It was gonna be a big thing for Old Saybrook, big case. I've never seen so much crack cocaine in my entire career. I've never seen so much methamphetamine in my entire career. We pulled a gun off of them with a high capacity magazine. It's no joke anymore. It's just not. And so are we dodging bullets every day? Absolutely not. And thank God for our community that we're not. But we're doing some serious work out there. And while it's not every call, it's some calls. And we don't know which calls it's going to be. And so we have to approach everything with a very tactical mindset.
Buenas
tardes.
Buenas tardes. Brian Mora, sargento Ciccone. ¿Qué pasó?
Vengo a levantar una denuncia y quiero que todo quede por escrito. Que quede escrito la denuncia, porque no quiero que pase alguna cosa y no esté esto asentado.
¿Denuncia?
Sí.
She wants to make like a lawsuit complaint.
About what?
¿Cuál es la denuncia?
En contra de mi roomie. Y quiero que
Not every day, every other day, we're interacting with people whose primary language is not English. I am so fortunate to have 3 officers that can speak Spanish fluently. Fortunate that one of them was willing to be Santa Claus, so the 40 kids at Goodwin School who are learning English for the first time were able to sit on Santa Claus's lap and actually tell someone in old Saybrook, who wasn't a white old guy that only spoke English, what they wanted for Christmas. That's good stuff, folks. Our community is changing. We must change with it. I have to field a team that is representative of the community that we police. Sergeant Ciccone does not know Spanish. Thank God, one of our Spanish-speaking officers, Brian Mora, was working that night and was able to do that. Now, that's a very controlled environment, right? That's someone coming into the station. So if that person came into the station and needed resources and no one could speak Spanish, we'd eventually bring them in, we'd put them on the phone, we get some language line assistance. But imagine if they're reporting something very sensitive. That's a horrible way to interact with another human. So we can call other agencies to see if they have Spanish-speaking officers, but you've heard the availability of personnel. I don't fault any one of those other towns. There's just not enough of us going on. There's a law enforcement shortages. There are state troopers who are just promoted to the rank of lieutenant who are running barracks with 5 years on. That's unheard of in Connecticut's law enforcement community. But this is what we're seeing more often.
Did you explain to the audience that the lieutenant commands
How
much over at the barracks?
Yeah,
Like 50 or 60 guys.
correct. Well, not anymore, but yes.
Yeah.
Back in the day when they had that many, sure.
Yeah.
So that's a high level of responsibility with not a lot of tenure.
Stop, police, stop! 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 Stop, don't do it! Police, stop! Police, stop! Don't move! Get down! He's fighting, he's fighting. Don't move, man. Don't do it.
Surrender.
Don't do it, man.
Surrendering.
Don't do it.
I'm surrendering.
A Walmart larceny. This cop has no idea what this guy's got on him. None. Doesn't know if he's got a knife, doesn't know if he's got a gun, doesn't know if he's got a whole bunch of warrants and he's a wanted felon. No idea. But these are the split-second encounters that my staff, who I'm extremely proud of, are encountering every day. Let me show you one more. And this is what we're encountering often.
Right there.
That's him?
That's it.
Alright. What's going on with him?
He's badgering people, screaming and yelling.
What is he screaming and yelling?
Like, I don't know, it's all in Spanish. And he tried to get on a train, but the conductor wouldn't let him on, and I was out on the platform, right? And he said, I'm going to Manhattan, so I tried to direct him. I thought he was fine. I tried to direct him.
Okay.
And he just went out on the rage.
Okay, so give me 1 second, man. Don't leave because I'm not.
I have to be in the station.
I'm gonna talk to you and try to find out more information, okay? Hey! Hey! What's going on?
Buscaban ticket.
¿Español?
Y no, buscaban ticket no.
No, ¿qué está pasando?
Yo ando buscando un ticket, pues yo voy para la casa.
¿Para la casa?
Sí.
¿Para dónde?
Para White Plains. Yo ando buscando trabajo.
¿Para dónde?
Para White Plains voy.
¿Dónde es eso?
White Plains está un pueblo lejos.
¿Lejos?
Sí.
Okay. ¿Tienes ID?
No, no tengo dinero.
¿No tienes nada de ID?
No soy guatemalteco, de Estados Unidos.
¿No tienes ni un pasaporte?
No, ni pasaporte tampoco.
Wanted felon. If this was an English speaking officer, bet you we never would have got his information. This guy would have got on the train and went to Manhattan, and we would have failed you. And so to be able to have these resources, maybe some of our professional development monies this year, right? We try to find some other officers that want to go through an immersion class and maybe try to get a little bit better with, law enforcement conversational Spanish to mutter through a conversation like this to make sure that they're at least safe. So that when two folks are speaking in a foreign language and they're talking about how to get away or how to attack a police officer, they can hear that and understand that. And so again, I value the three that speak Spanish fluently so very, very much, because without them, we would be failing residents when they need help the most, and we'd be failing our residents in protecting them when we encounter folks that don't speak English, but are here in Old Saybrook to do harm. And so thank God that they're here.
What, like, threw them off? Because he said he didn't have his ID, the officer asked him, so what happened next?
Yeah, I think he's able to get in a conversation with him and eventually get, his ID and talk with him about his name. Whereas an English speaking officer might be like, ID, no, get him out of here.
Right.
And that's not doing the job. But if there's no one around to come do that, right, we can use Google Translate. We've tried that. You can call an interpreter, but sometimes that just doesn't work. Hey, I'm on scene with a potential felon. Could you, operator making $15.95 an hour, help me with my interrogate? It just doesn't work. And so having those resources obviously are extremely, extremely important. So I thank you for your attention. This is time now for any comments or questions. If anyone has any.
I would thank you for a very thorough presentation.
Thanks, and that, and I really enjoyed your goals, as I said before. Thank you.
Steve, does the union have an issue with the meal break statistic that you showed?
The union hasn't seen that yet. But look, so here's what I can tell you about our folks, right? We have a great group of folks. In the last year, we've had 3 major personnel things, 2 that have come to conclusion and 1 that's pending. I'm saddened by those, but I'm also pleased that I can demonstrate to the community that we know how to police our own. So I take our role in Old Saybrook extremely seriously. I take my role as chief to make sure that we're only fielding the brightest and the best, also extremely seriously. There's someone on our force that should not be wearing our badge or our patch on their shoulder. I will do everything I can to remove them from service. Sometimes that's through termination, and sometimes that's through saying it's just not the right place here. But our cops are working through their breaks because they're dedicated. All employees are great employees until they're not. Right? So all of you here have either run a business or worked at a business, and you've all been excited about the latest and greatest employee through the door. And they're great until they're not. Town Hall has had a bunch of turnover. They found great employees until they're not. And no one can predict that. No one can predict if that's the 2nd year on the job, the 5th year on the job, or they're brilliant for 25. I can't, you can't. And so when I have a great employee who has chosen the wrong path, depending on the seriousness of that decision, depends on the seriousness of the consequence. And so the police commissioner in the room knows that I've been before them twice, and most likely will be before them again, to bring a serious personnel matter to them. I don't enjoy doing that, but it is what is necessary to maintain the integrity of the police department and the public trust of the residents of the town of Old Saybrook. Audience.
Comment. Sir. think we recognize you, but please identify yourself.
Frank Heaney. I think I have been fortunate enough to participate in a half a dozen of these. I just want to congratulate you again on another wonderful budget presentation tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Chief, go ahead, Matt.
Carl, you can go.
No, just quick question, Chief. You mentioned earlier how you were hoping to get tier 1 post accreditation. Is tier 1 the highest level, or what are the tiers, and how long has post accreditation been out there, and why have we been making progress towards that, and why now?
It's a three-part question, Mr. Perslow. So
It's all tied
post-accreditation,
into one question.
post-accreditation has been around for quite some time. And so we have achieved getting the basics of that, but not achieving tier 1. So if you go on our website, you'll see our annual compliance of all the model policies that we're required to have under state regulations. But it's been time and commitment. So as you know, and I think that you've been part of the force at CCM to help get the legislative change, under the Police Accountability Act, every municipal police department was required by a certain date to achieve CALIA accreditation. And under the revamp of that legislation, you can either go for CALIA, which is extremely costly for a town our size, or you can achieve post accreditation. Tier 1 is the base, tier 2, and then tier 3 being the top. So the town of Old Saybrook has to achieve tier 3 accreditation by 2025 or 2026. And I'm confident that we'll do that. We're taking it one step at a time. I'm actually fortunate. I was one of the folks chosen by Post to actually lead accreditation teams to do this for other agencies. So I've been involved in one other agency. I'm starting another agency, state agency actually, on Monday with my team. And so that's invaluable professional development for me as well as we prepare for our assessment, which I predict will be sometime probably mid to late fall. And free, other than the personnel time that we have to dedicate to it.
Okay.
Right, so, two things, so both on goals, so thank you for incorporating the conversation we had earlier this year around gun safety into more of an operational approach.
Very well.
Great, and still happy to participate with that.
Thank you.
In terms of the professional development goal for, and I might not have the language right, developing a matrix for the employee, for the officers to approach how they're going to look at a professional development, is that something that needs to have the union buy-in and be part of that? Is it developing a matrix for the next renegotiation process, or is it something that can happen before the next union contract?
Yeah, so thank you for asking that question, because obviously I threw a lot at you today. So let's see.
Yeah, there.
Got it up there. All right, perfect. So every year, our staff gets the pleasure, I'll say, of sitting down with me one-on-one. And we talk about a lot of things one-on-one in my office. Everything from how I could be a better chief for them, what their expectations are from our organization and from our leaders, anything that they think should be changed. It's kind of a one-on-one version of overall strategic planning that we do annually. And then in that, we talk about what their professional goals are. And so a new police officer who graduates the academy, you would think, has all the training and certifications they need to be a police officer. Well, that is not the case. So to use a very simplistic example, to be certified in the roadside sobriety tests to detect if someone is driving under the influence of drugs, you have to take a separate class after you're out of the academy. Courses like interview and interrogation and advanced interview interrogation are classes that you take after the academy. So what I want to be able to do is say, okay, let's look at the professional development that we know is out there. Let's create a minimum, kind of a floor, a foundation of within X amount of years that I want these officers to have all these same certifications. There's the beginning of my matrix. And then through my conversation, I want to know what makes that officer tick. What are they interested in? So one of my officers is very interested in developing a motorcycle patrol. That'd be pretty cool. They're gonna dime for it in the budget, but that doesn't mean it can't happen. That doesn't mean he can't do a proposal. that we find some sort of lease thing for 3 months in the summer and we send them to training, because that becomes a retention hook. I have a police officer who's very, very interested, willing to move, sell and move to meet contractual requirements so he could be our next canine handler. That's a retention hook. And so as we move on, and I know, well, money is nice, but personal leave time needs more, and diversifying an employee, so it's not the same thing every day, is what I need to retain. I get that from them, and that'll be part of that matrix. So everyone will have the same, but a little something individualized as that retention hook.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
And your matrix assures it meets the needs of the department.
Of course, yeah, so when we do professional development, it always has to meet the need of the police department, the town, and the operation. So there's a 3-pronged test before you get to go to any school that you might be interested in.
Marine Patrol, while very, you don't need to go to a slide, but while very small, can you just explain very briefly how you staff that?
Sure.
Because it doesn't seem like a lot of money.
It's not a lot of money. So if my Marine Patrol vessel handlers were here, they would agree that they're not paid a lot of money.
I mean, the hours.
Yeah,
more than that.
yeah, so more often than not, it's a civilian boat handler and a police officer on the boat. Years and years and years ago, a civilian who was not a certified cop could work Marine Patrol and write tickets. State changed the law on that, which is why we staff it with police officers. And so our patrols generally are Friday nights, Saturday during the day, and Sunday during the day. There are some spot times that we go out to try to throw the boating public off to make sure that everyone is, that we're generating the voluntary compliance of laws. And then obviously our response or emergency response. There are times that there'll be 2 police officers on the boat. So if I can't get a civilian that wants to give up their Saturday or their Sunday for 15 something an hour, then another police officer might have to staff the boat.
And having talked with a few officers who served on that, that is a retention hook.
Yeah, that's one of the things. So that our ATV patrol, the canine, maybe this motorcycle thing, bicycle patrol. We have a gentleman in Old Saybrook who is now selling like electronic bike scooters, and there's a police model, and they want to talk to us, you know, about that. I'm not really sure I can give that to the motorcycle guy and be like, well, maybe next year. But it's all different things. And guys, the stuff that we do, like the community, the OSPD care stuff, let's not forget that. So today, I don't know what I did with it, went somewhere. Today, a lady from the statewide food pantry showed up, and the turkeys that did not go to our residents at Thanksgiving and Christmas went up to the food bank, the Connecticut Food Share Bank. And what we sent up there equated to 5,831 meals. That's your cops and dispatchers doing that, right? The toys that we do every year, the diaper drive that will be coming up very soon, the shorts for whatever, right? The first donator to the lights. Your Old Saybrook Police Department employees are all in when it comes to the community. We have unique jobs. We're one of the few people in government that walks into a room and says, no. Sometimes people don't like to hear no. And when you're the face of the no, some people don't like you, even though they've never met you. But this is the way it works. So in our society, in American society, a civilian law enforcement force is the one that draws the line in the sand. It's the one that says what the quality of life in a small town will be. If we let larcenies happen all the time, then we're moving on to the next crime. If we treat them like a big thing, people won't come to town to do them. Everyone here's heard it. Don't drive drunk in Old Saybrook. I'm proud of that. Very proud of that. People want to think I have 15 cars on patrol. God bless them. Don't commit a crime. It's 3, but God bless them. And so while we take our responsibility seriously for our traditional work, we also certainly take our responsibility very seriously for the non-traditional work. And we're proud of it. Any other? Yes.
It's not really a question, it's a comment. I'm glad to see that you're going to reinstitute or reestablish or whatever it is, the Explorers.
Yeah, me too.
That's a good program.
Thank you. It's a great feeder program. I hope it takes off the way I'm hoping it does.
Well, your goals are very ambitious. There's 10 of them that I could count. That's a lot of goals for 1 year. But I also have to say that in looking over this budget, I think it's a very, very well done budget. It's very lean for the most part. I do still have some questions which we'll address later on, next time around. But when you look at the average, the increase of the 3.14, and then you look at what the step movement is along with the union contracts, that's almost your entire 3.14. And the 3.14 is also 3/4 of a percentage point less than last year. So whatever magic you created in here, you balance things out effectively. So, and the presentation was wonderful.
Thank you. And certainly thanks to Jen, who does a lot of work during the budget season. Sometimes she doesn't get to go home because it's budget season. Captain DePerry does a tremendous amount of work for me as my right-hand man every day with everything, and certainly with the budget. And John Travasino from Next Gen helped me make some charts today when he was unceremoniously summoned to the police department to help out. So it's a team effort, and I certainly appreciate that.
Any other, let's move to final comments from board and commission members. Let's start with the Board of Selectmen. Are there any final comments?
Well, I will comment that I've been to a good number of these budget presentations as well, and I began 11 years ago in the Board of Selectmen with many concerns that I believe many people in this room have had as well and have had heard. When I came to the presentations, I was skeptical often. I wondered about the numbers, I wondered about the formulas. And you've demonstrated year after year after year a professional approach to how you do things, a thorough approach. I know that the police in this town do a phenomenal job. It's been my statement to you and to others, no more people, no more stuff. But I support the people and I support the stuff you have in place. I appreciate what you do.
Thank you very much. And just one quick thing with that. So the formulas that he speaks of, you'll read in your books eventually, or have the police commission has. Our replacement formula actually was reduced for patrol staff. So based on the data that I'm reviewing on a daily basis through our records management system and some overarching thing, I reduced that replacement liability from 80% down to 75%. Now, is that a huge savings? It is not, but it shows honest budgeting, right? So if we don't need it at 80, why keep it at 80 to have fluff in your budget? Reduce it to 75, right? And that's what we did throughout the document. Thank you, Scott.
I have a question on electricity. I don't know if the town still is on a contract for the price.
I think, Carl, if you're listening, you can chime in, but yes, we do contract. I don't know the specifics of it, but.
Unfortunately, right now, our contract ended November 30th. Right now, we're kind of a floating rate, but we are locking back in. So well, let me finish that. We're locking back in for about 6 months. I believe it is in March. I think November or December, January, February. We really couldn't find anything through our broker that was attractive. We're going to go back in for 6 months. I'm working with them on a few things right now, Brad. We will certainly look at a longer term contract if we find something favorable. We're also looking at a net metering, a virtual net metering possibility that is a project out of town for someone who's putting in a solar project who needs a municipal partner. It would not involve Old Saybrook getting solar electricity directly, but the law requires a municipal partner. And what it would result in is a fee to the town of Old Saybrook to offset electric prices. So I've had a couple conversations with Titan Energy, that's through CCM. They're an independent company, but they attach themselves to CCM. So I've been in a couple conversations with them about how we might reduce our energy costs over the next year, over the next 2 years, over the next 5 years, and the schools buy in with that. But there's not a lot of places to hide, as you know, right now. It's incredibly difficult. A couple good things. It's a warmer winter in both in Europe and in New England right now. It's amazing as what's going on in Eastern Europe that oil and natural gas right now is below what it was before the Ukraine war. I mean, that or LNG, I think it was, or natural gas, I forget which, but incredible things have happened in the energy market that we all thought natural gas and oil would be spiking incredibly, and they're not. So I'm hopeful that our broker will be able to find something for us where we will be able to go out and get a fair contract over the next year or two, but we're working on it.
Was there ever any members of the public?
Oh, yeah, there are 16 of them.
I don't know if you want to make sure any of them had questions before.
Yeah, we should. I had looked around the room and didn't see anything. I forgot the screen. Larry, do we have any hands raised among the virtual members of the public? For a final comment?
No.
Then let's go to any nice comments from any member of the Board of Finance, other than those who've already commented. If not, any last comments from members of the Police Commission?
So I was advised to do, I wanted to actually, there was supposed to be another moment of silence on the agenda for Athena Strand, the little girl who in Texas, her life ended tragically and horrifically. She's related to members of the old Saybrook residents or population. I think it's really important. I'm not going to go into detail about what happened to her. Everybody can look it up. And if you're unfamiliar, please go ahead and build yourselves. But I just think it's important we just take a moment for this little girl, 7-year-old. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Any others?
I just have one question. When this is posted online, are we able to see just the screens,
I mean.
like just the slides?
So-
Like if it's at a distance, it doesn't help.
Right, so the slide presentation will go up as a separate PDF.
Perfect. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, just to make it easier.
Yep.
And then Larry gets the slideshow and he does a thing with it, so the camera's not on wait for 2 hours and.
Yeah, we can overlay the slides over the video.
Yeah, so we'll try to make it as user friendly as we can for the public. And then so I'm sorry, I would ask you questions.
No, I think there were no other comments.
Okay. This commission's good. So the next police commission meeting on the budget is January 10th at 7 p.m. I've asked the finance director to attend that meeting. So if you have any questions specific to some of the line items or budgetary philosophies, Joe will be center stage to help me answer those questions. And then if you choose not to make action on the 10th, January 13th, with your final day that you chose at 7 p.m.
I think we are very confident that we'll be able to make final action on the 10th.
We'll see.
Okay.
And obviously between now and then, if you have questions, feel free to give me a call. I'll be happy to meet with anybody on any of the boards and commissions. No one really wants to talk to me about the budget, so this is probably it. So if you have questions, feel free to give me a call, bring an iced tea, of the chat.
If there's no other business to come before the boards and commissions assemble, I invite a motion to adjourn. Any discussion?
The Board of Finance will stand adjourned for a few moments while I vouch my age, and then we will reconvene for our regular meeting.
And also the Board of Selectmen will also adjourn. We don't need to motion that, but. And I'll stick around for your meeting, Paul.
Okay, thank you.
As to the motion to adjourn the police commission, all in favor?
Aye.
And it's to the Board of Finance,
Thank you.
and all those in favor?
Never mind.